going to drop into After Effects and, put a few keyframes on and show you what we can do with it in After Effects. You probably watched a previous video on Canvas about how to do this. It is a simple process. I'm going to show you a little bit more detail. I have my document set up here in Illustrator. And remember, I have 2 versions of this guy, so mine's a little more complicated because I have some frames that need to work together as he kicks. And I even have the brushes in here that I used to make my custom brush. It's over here and my white background. We're going to delete all of those in After Effects. I can delete them here if I want to, but the important thing is we save this into an assets folder. So I have this folder called Project 3 on my desktop. I have this saved in there already, and I have an audio file that I recorded in Audacity as well. Just me going yai or whatever as I'm kicking. All right, so it's a standard Illustrator file, and I've already saved it, so I'm going to just click cancel, so I don't need to resave it again. Okay, so let's jump into After Effects. The important thing in After Effects is that we import this file correctly. And so that it's easy, but there's some very important specific things. So let's go to File, Import, and File. Go to our Assets folder, make sure we get the right version of this. I have several versions saved. Note in my preview that I can't see the edges of my sun, but in my Illustrator document, the sun extended out past the border, my frame. So the sun is drawn out here, and I want to make sure I'm able to see that in After Effects, that I can move the sun around and it won't show me cropped edges here. So to do that, and to bring this in as a composition, I come down here to Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. There's 2 options to bring it into the composition, but this top one will let me see the tips of my sun and the stuff that extends outside my bounding box. And then I click Open. Okay, so it'll bring in the layers. It'll bring in the thing already as composition. I just need to double click on it. You can see a little preview. And it even has the layers turned off that I had turned off. And at this point, I can do some basic things. So first of all, let's check my composition settings. That's probably the best place to begin before we get carried away. Make sure it's still 1920 by 1080 HDTV. These were the presets I had you guys use in Illustrator. They should carry over. But the one thing that we didn't set in Illustrator was the duration. So I want mine to be 10 seconds. So you can see the last thing I did was 10 seconds too, but you can just put 10 period for 10 seconds. And just sort of guess on whatever you want your duration to be. You can always change it. You can see these things don't extend to the end. So I'm going to shift click these guys and then just drag all these to the very end of the composition. Okay, now let's turn them all on. Now first of all, let's make a few basic changes to this. I'm going to show you guys. I can take things like my sky, and I can go to my transformation things. No, I don't want to do my sky. I'm going to do my sun. Take my sun, and I can take the position and the scale. I can scale it. Oops, I didn't even need to set keyframes. I can scale it down a little bit if I want to, and I can drop it on the horizon a little bit if I want to. Something like that. And I could set keyframes if I want that to move. But I just wanted to change some values just to show you that you can. All right, but I didn't set any keyframes. I mean, I did, and I took them out because that was a mistake. There's still an I-beam. There's no blue diamonds there. No keyframes. Okay, just to change the properties. What about these guys? Well, remember that, okay, the brush layer we don't need. I'm going to delete it. The white layer I don't need. I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard to delete it. But here, I could do some things. Like I could actually pull my, oops, let's flip these around. I'm going to undo that. I want my begin to be on the bottom layer just because it's easier for me to think of it that way. I could actually do something where I truncate the timeline a little bit. like on my kick begin, I'm gonna hit Option and the right square bracket, and it will pull that in for me so I don't have to go all the way down there and yank it all the way back. But I could do something like this, but I'd need 1,000,000 layers because I want this to happen 10 times. Okay, I need 20 layers to do that because I'd have to keep duplicating my kick begin, which should be easy, I guess, but I want to put in a little bit of rotation and opacity instead. So I'm going to hit Command Z and undo again, so I'm back to the beginning. I think a better thing to do would be to use opacity keyframes. So I'm going to shift click these again and hit T, and that'll bring up my opacity. So you can think of T for transparency. And then I'm going to click down here to deselect them. What I want to do is my kick end, I don't want to see that at the beginning, so I'll just set it to 0. All right, and then I want it to happen pretty quick, but I need to set my initial keyframe with the stopwatch. From then on, every time I change the value, it'll put in another keyframe. All right, so I click the stopwatch just once, sets my initial properties, stores those values, and then I can come here. I'm only going to go like 3 frames. And I'm going to turn this one up to 100 and turn this one down to 0. Oops, that's not 100. And so what happens is this. Whoosh, whoosh. And also occurred to me, I want to rotate him a little bit when he's doing this, but I want to rotate him from his foot. So I'm going to go to my kick end, grab this tool, it's the pan behind tool, and take my center point and move it down here, and do the same thing to my kick begin layer, which I can't even see right now. But well, now I can see I couldn't see my other one, I guess I should say. So they both have this somewhere around the foot. All right, so when I rotate it there, actually I don't need to rotate my kick end anyway, so it didn't really matter. I just need to rotate my kick begin. But we'll do that in a little bit. For now, I want that to happen. And then I want to go about seconds. And then I want it to go back to how it was. So I am going to put in, I'm going to hit this little add a keyframe and add a keyframe for both of these, just so I can store that value of 100% and 0%. So it maintains those two values between the keyframes. So they both stay at 100% and 0% all the way almost for a whole second. Then I can go forward a few more frames. Let's do it once, that's at 1 second, and I can go ahead and send them back to 0 and 100%. All right, so it's going to be flying through the air. I'm going to do that separately. And then he's going to land on his foot, and then he's going to kick again, but I want to keep him there for a split second. So at 1 second, he's standing. I'm going to go forward like 2 frames, 3 frames, 2 frames. Duplicate that keyframe to hold that value. And then go forward about 3 more frames again. So that was 102, so 105. I will have him kick again. So that one needs to be 100%, and this one needs to be 0. All right, once I have that basic pattern, I can cut and paste these things. I don't need to keep redoing this thing. Okay, I'm not sure if that was a great idea to hold him like that, but if I want to move those two closer together, I can. So he only pauses for like 1 frame. But I can watch it in real time. Yeah, that's good. I'm also going to add some rotation. But we'll do that in a minute. A little bit of rotation. Okay. Actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and put the rotation in now because we're here. So here, from here to this point, I want him to rotate. All right, not when he comes down, but from this to this. So just so I can keep everything in alignment and see everything, we'll do this. And again, I only want to do it on the begin. The begin is the only one that needs to rotate a little bit. So on the begin, I can click this little stopwatch, and all I want him to do is rotate a little bit to the next keyframe, and he fades out real quickly, so he doesn't need to, you only see the beginning of this. So like 9 degrees maybe, let's see. You can see him rotating, see his head moving backwards. He's sort of setting up for that, and then he's transforming, he's fading out and becoming the other character. All right, and then what I want to happen is now that he's faded out, I'm going to cut and paste these keyframes again. But I want to make sure he gets set back to 0, so I'm going to put that back at 0. All right, so you don't see this happening, but you can see the little bounding box. He's being reset to 0, so when I cut and paste him to the next set of frames, he'll be there. Okay, so cutting and pasting. I'm going to shift-click both these again and go back to my transformation keyframes. So those are where I'm going to start. So unfortunately, After Effects only lets you do one layer of keyframes at a time. But this sequence is going to be really important because he's in this flying position, he's going to land somewhere else. And remember, this started at 27 frames. So, and these are all in alignment. I'm going to hit copy. So Command-C on my keyboard or edit copy after I select these 4 frames. And then I'm going to jump ahead 1 second and then paste. And I can do the same thing for these guys. I can select them and say edit copy. And my playhead's already where I want it at 127, so I can hit paste. And of course, I should scrub, make sure this is working. Again, he's going to be flying here. Oh, I haven't cut and pasted the rotation keyframe, so there's no rotation yet for the other one. Okay. But at this point, these I can copy to my clipboard. Again, jump to the next 227, paste them, go up here, copy these, paste them. And these are now on my clipboard. So at this point, I could just jump again to 327. So put 3 in there. I'm not going to do all these, I promise. And paste them. All right, just got to remember what I've copied last, because whatever you copied last is on your clipboard, so I can paste this. All right, so I got all those guys. I should do the same thing with the rotation, which was only on my kick begin layer. So I can hit the R, and I can see these guys. And they started, just to remind myself, at that 3rd keyframe up here, when he was sort of aligned with that 3rd keyframe. So at this point, if I want, I can go up to this layer and hit the little go to next keyframe. And I just got to remember I'm on the 3rd keyframe, and then paste, and then jump forward again, that 3rd keyframe in the sequence, and paste, and just keep doing that. 3rd keyframe and paste. Okay, so those should be in alignment. Yes. You can see him rotating backwards and kicking, and again, you won't see those little dots once playing in real time, because it won't be selected. Here, we'll do that. All right, now we just need to make him fly all around. Okay. Let's save this. Oops, file, save as, save as. It's going to go in my assets folder on my desktop. Project 3, Jeff's one, because there's going to be a bunch of these. Okay, so I have the basic movement down, but what would be good is if I could take these guys and move them together. And I can't do that. I can actually put these guys, even though they're part of a composition already, into their own composition as their own unit. And then anything I change on that composition will be reflected in this composition. So the way to do that is you shift-click them, and under Layer, at the very, very bottom, there's this thing called Pre-Compose. And all that means, it's basically making it a layer set, like in Photoshop. And I can name it whatever I want. That doesn't, that's, I'll call him Karate Guy. All right, so you see now this is called Karate Guy. And if I double click on this, it opens up Karate Guy, and there's my, all those keyframes are in there already. Okay, so why do I do this? Well, because it makes it easier when I go to change my positions. Now he's like one object. On this layer, he's one object. He has his own position keyframes. So I can start here at the beginning, and I can say, okay, let's put a position keyframe in here, and then we'll move forward a little bit, and somewhere in the middle, like about 15, 14 frames, I'm going to move him up, because that's where he's kicking. So I need my selection tool so I can jump him up. And then he's going to come back down. Whenever his feet are on the ground, he needs to be down on the ground. So here he's down. And of course, it'll record all these keyframes and make a motion path for me. So let's see what happens. So he goes, wah. He should probably be moving forward, so I should land him. It looks like he's, you know what, I can just actually move him back this way up here. I went back to this keyframe to modify this a bit. Yeah. So he lands, and then up here he's jumped again, so I can have him jump. I can even have him go out of the frame if I want. Kick me in the top of the head, maybe. And then when his feet are together, I need him on the ground. All right, so it's all I have to do is that. And you know, After Effects puts all the interpolated keyframes in. All I need to do is go through here again and find out where he's got his feet out. It's basically between the second marks. I want him flying in the air, and then he lands. He needs to be on the ground. You know, anywhere in this area was fine. All right, let's hit the. Okay. No, we're going to let him go through here and watch him in real time. All right, if I want him to look like he's moving faster, I should probably turn on some motion blur. So, you know, obviously I would finish that to the very end. But let's say I want some blur. So remember, I have these blur switches. If you don't see those, just click this toggle switches modes thing, and then I can turn on my motion blur for that. And you can see already he looks like he got blurry. Now he's going to look, whenever he's moving, he's going to be blurred a wee bit. And if I'm not sure if that's working correctly, I can always just double click on this and make sure I have them set here, even though these aren't really moving, so it shouldn't matter. But just in case, just show you can always go back to this document and modify it. So when I want to go back and add the rest of the keyframes and finish that thing up, I can. Right, because I only put them in halfway, but I can always get back to that. Just double click on this and it'll open up in another tab. And I can go back and continue to oops, I didn't want my position keyframes. I wanted my transparency keyframes, my opacity keyframes. I can continue to cut and paste these guys now to get this down to the very end. Right? Okay. Okay, that's probably enough for now. Let's just remind you guys how to, oh, no, I do want to do one other thing that will make this cool, is something with the background, because it's so stagnant and that sun feels like it should be blazing or anti-blazing for 2020. So I'm going to apply a filter to this sun. Like, I could, let's do an easy thing. Let's just apply a filter. It'll make it squiggle for me. I don't need any other suns for make this to happen, no other frames for it or drawings of it, just a single sun. So this could be super handy. But you have a whole bunch of effects up here in After Effects. This is post-production kind of software, and I want to distort this sun. So it's fun to just try these all. If you don't like them, like I can try like warp. Whoa, look at that. And you can see, you can play, it'll bring up this little effects controls, and you can play with these guys to see what they look like. And you can, explore this like option. And of course, anything you have here, you could set a keyframe, right? There's a keyframe thing. I could set initial keyframe. I could move down the timeline. I could set another keyframe. And then what'll happen is it'll make that motion happen to that sun. Now this is not the one I want. But again, you can experiment. If you decide you don't like it, just go to where it says effects, because this is new, right? It wasn't here before. Once I applied it, it came on. I'm just gonna hit that, select it, hit delete on my keyboard, and it's gone. Back to my normal sun. But I do know the one I want to use. I'm gonna keep that twirly down so you can see. Effects, oops. Gotta select my layer. I'm going to go to distort and do this turbulent displace one because that's kind of wiry and I'm not even sure which one of these. So here's the cool thing: you can use these under here are the same as these here. It just comes. There's a lot of different options here, so sometimes it's just easier to use it right here just so you can see them all. And again, we're going to have to experiment a little bit. I know from previous use of this, I'm going to want to change the evolution and the amount, and maybe even the size. If I'm not sure, I can just click them all and then start to play with them and see what happens. So set some initial values for the amounts. That looks good. Let's see what the size does. And I'm gonna keep the evolution. You know what? I'm gonna turn something on. All right, and then I'll just go to the very, very end, and I'll reset some of these numbers. Again, I'm not sure exactly what these are going to do. Ooh, that's too much. But we're just going to scrub through and see what happens. Okay, what it's doing now, that green line is rendering it. Oopsie, I did something wrong with the keyframes there. No worries. We'll go to our sun and our turbulent displace effects. And we clearly got to change some more values here. And I'm just going to scrub through and watch what happens. Oh, percentage, right? That, oh, there we go. And the number of times, it only happened once because I only picked one in there. But now it's going to happen way too many times. 60. Okay, let's go down a little bit there. Maybe a little less. But it is a dark and freaky sun now. Oh wait, here it is in real time. That's pretty good. Okay. So all these are here, and don't worry, your project is still here. These are all tabbed together, remember? I can X that out if I want, so I can see my project again. No worries. All right, and these, again, are under the layer we applied them to, the sun, in this case. So I'm going to lock this sun now, and the sky, and the landscape. Okay. All right, so one last thing to show you is that you can duplicate. I wanted another karate guy on the left side. I could have, in Illustrator, just duplicated my layer and flipped it. That would have been easy. But then I would have also had to add keyframes and everything to them separately. And it seemed quicker, because that was the time-consuming part, to actually put the keyframes on here and then duplicate this layer. So I can take Karate Guy, this composition, and just do Command-D on my keyboard, or Edit should be under here, duplicate right here. And then I'm going to Control-click on it, or right-click on it, and call this, rename this, so I don't get confused, Karate Guy Left. Now you can look forever and try to find a way to flip this, but there's a weird way of flipping a layer. I'm going to turn one layer off because they're both right on top of each other, right? They're duplicates. So this is my left layer now. the way that we move this and flip it, like mirror it, is we actually do that under scale. You unclick this guy, and I'm going to flip it around the x-axis, so I put a -100 in here, and it flips it over. Yeah, I occasionally have to look that up on the internet because I always forget that because it doesn't make any sense, but it's what happens. It works. Now the beauty is that all these keyframes are put in here, and right now it would be like a mirror image. So probably what I will do, I'm going to turn both these guys on now, hit play. So it's totally a mirror image. So that's an easy fix, really. All I have to do is go to my karate guy and click on position. That would select all of them. I could, move a few of these off a little bit. So, just move them a few frames so that now they're not exactly the same. I could also go to any one of these spots and change the value just for this guy. It's a separate document now, or a separate layer, so it's not going to affect the other ones. So any one of these keyframes, I can just jump from one to the next, and then just tweak them a little bit. And that way these guys won't be exactly in unison. All right, so they'll jumping around a little separately. All right, but to make a duplicate, I just hit Command D to make a duplicate of the layer, and then the only option I changed on here was I changed the scale to a -100, and that mirrored it on the x-axis. A horizontal mirroring as opposed to a vertical mirroring. Okay, last thing. So far, we've taken our compositions when they're done, and we say add to render queue. And this is fine. I would probably go ahead and make up a version. But the one thing we'll find in here is that there is no way to, if you're on a Macintosh, to export this in the version that we need, in the format we need for Zoom. It only does QuickTime. It used to do H.264 in here, but it doesn't do that anymore, which is an MP4. So I'm going to go ahead and make a high-quality version of this. And then we can take this, and there's a link on Canvas so that we can take this version and convert it via an upload on some website, and it'll convert it and give us a download free for an MP4. So I'm going to say, OK. I don't even have the sound in here. That's for later. I'll show you that during class. And the sound won't play in Zoom anyway. So the other option, I can just say, no, I'll put off for now since there is no audio. I also have to click here and give this a name. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it in my Project 3 folder. And I'll just call it my Final Project 3. Click Save, but then you got to click Render. Okay, obviously this is not done, so I'll render it again when it's finished. Actually, I have a final version of it, but that is long enough for now. So I will capture you all later, and I will sit here and watch this render. And again, I'll need to convert this to an MP4 for use in Zoom for our critique. All right, that movie, the .mov file, will not work.